When I married Ethan, I thought I was finally stepping into a family that would love and support us both. Instead, I walked straight into a war zone with his mother, Margaret, a woman who believed the world revolved around her and her perfect image. From the moment I moved into their home, I became invisible. She smiled in front of neighbors, but behind closed doors, her words cut deep. "People like you," she said once, "should be grateful someone like my son even looked at you." I was working part-time, trying to save enough for our own place, while she constantly reminded Ethan how I wasn't wife material. Her words poisoned our home, but what broke me wasn't just the insults, it was what she made me do next. One evening, she came into our room, her face twisted with disdain. "Since you don't contribute much," she said coldly, "you might as well stay out of my way. The upstairs is for the family. You can set up in the basement." I laughed, thinking it was a cruel joke. Single quotes, Ethan, spineless as ever, stood by her side, avoiding my eyes. "It's just temporary," he muttered, but the look in Margaret's eyes told me otherwise. That night, I dragged my few boxers down the narrow basement stairs, each step echoing like a punishment. The air was cold, damp, and smelled faintly of mold. The walls were unfinished, pipes ran across the ceiling, and there was one small window that barely let in light. She'd made it clear this was my space. Days turned into weeks. I went to work, came home, and returned to that basement like some unwanted tenant. Margaret would host parties upstairs while I stayed below. Listening to laughter I wasn't invited to join. But the humiliation didn't crush me, it hardened me. Every insult, every door closed in my face, every "you don't belong here" carved something sharp inside me. I stopped crying. I started planning. Because one thing Margaret never understood was that basements don't just hide the unwanted, they're where foundations are built. And I was about to build mine strong enough to bury her pride beneath it. Winter came early that year. The basement grew colder, and so did my heart. I worked extra shifts at the small design studio downtown, not just to escape that house, but to build something for myself. I told no one, not even Ethan, that my manager had noticed my skill with layouts and offered me a chance to handle a few private clients. Margaret thought I was just playing with colors. She had no idea that the projects I took after hours were paying for more than coffee and bus fare. They were paying for my independence. One night, I came home late to find my things scattered across the floor. My sketchbooks were torn, my laptop was missing. I heard her upstairs, laughing with one of her friends. When I went up to confront her, she looked me dead in the eye and said, "I thought I'd do some cleaning. That old junk wasn't worth keeping." That was the moment I felt something inside me snap. Not in anger, but in clarity. She'd spent months trying to make me feel small, unworthy, invisible. She thought she'd won. I walked back to the basement, shut the door, and sat in the dark for a long time. I didn't cry, I didn't scream. I just stared at the blank concrete wall and imagined her sitting there instead of me, uncomfortable, cold, and alone. The next day at work, my boss called me into his office. "You've been doing incredible work," he said. "I'm opening a new branch. I want you to lead the interior setup." I smiled for the first time in months. "You're serious?" "Completely. You've got the vision." That night, as I walked home, the plan began to form. Margaret loved control, her routines, her spotless home, her reputation as a successful business consultant. She even ran her small company from her study upstairs, the same one she wouldn't let me step into. So when the opportunity came for my firm to rent out office spaces for renovation, I had one request: a quiet home office set up for a new client in a residential property. I knew exactly whose house that was going to be. Revenge wasn't going to be loud or messy. It would be professional, elegant, cruel in its precision. It started with subtle groundwork. I didn't rush. I couldn't afford a single mistake. Margaret was the kind of woman who sniffed out weakness like perfume. A week later, I mentioned casually over breakfast, "My company's expanding. They're renting residential offices for client consultations. Funny enough, one of them is in this neighborhood." She looked up from her mug, clearly intrigued. "Oh, which one?" I shrugged. "Not sure yet. They just said it's got a perfect basement layout. Quiet, isolated, ideal for focus." She smirked. "Sounds dreary, but some people prefer the dark, I suppose." I just smiled. "You'd be surprised what can be built underground." For the next few weeks, I worked with my team offsite, arranging paperwork, shifting logistics, and quietly noting the house's layout whenever I had to help with chores. I took photos of the basement angles, measurements, lighting, all under the guise of organizing my hobby projects. At work, I shared my idea. What if we turned a dull basement into a productivity hub? Minimalist design, soundproofing, industrial chic vibe. My boss loved it. "If we can market that aesthetic," he said, "we'll attract high-end clients." Perfect. I hired a small crew under the company's name, told them the homeowner Margaret had already approved everything. They came when she was out, assuming it was all part of the design initiative. I paid them with my personal commissions. Every penny worth it. By the time she returned from her weekend spa retreat, the basement was unrecognizable. Gone were the damp walls and flickering lights. It was now sleek, modern, with polished floors, a new desk, a glowing sign by the door, Margaret Hall Consulting Professional Office Suite. She nearly dropped her purse when she saw it. What is this? I played innocent. Oh, didn't Ethan tell you? The company wanted to feature your consulting business as a part of their campaign. Free renovation. Publicity for both sides. Her eyes widened. The flattery worked like magic. They want to feature me. Yes, I said sweetly. And all you have to do is move your office downstairs for a few months. They'll film everything. It'll look so professional. The hook was set. Her pride was my greatest ally. Within days, her beloved study upstairs was empty. Her desk now firmly planted in the very basement she once banished me to. I'd left the faint smell of fresh paint and the hum of fluorescent lights, just enough to gnaw at her nerves. And when she sat down there for the first time, I made sure the door clicked behind her with a slow, deliberate sound. The first week was quiet. To why Margaret tried to act like she loved her new office, bragging about it to her friends over speakerphone. I'd hear her fake laughter echoing through the floorboards, pretending that this was all some grand opportunity. But I knew better. Every night when she came up, there was tension in her shoulders, a faint bitterness in her tone. The basement had started to get to her. The air was colder down there. The lights buzzed faintly, just enough to make her squint. And every time the heater kicked on, the pipes above rattled like something alive. One afternoon, while she was in her office, I went down under the excuse of dropping off tea. I lingered just long enough to watch her flinch at the sound of the humming vent. "Do you hear that?" she asked. "Hear what?" I said, pretending not to notice. "That sound, it's like whispering." I smiled softly. "Basements do that. Airflow and echoes." Her jaw clenched. "It's distracting. I can't concentrate." I tilted my head. I managed for months. Her eyes flicked up, realization hitting for just a second before she brushed it off. A few days later, I accidentally locked the basement door from the outside, just for a minute, maybe two. When I opened it, she was standing there, pale, furious, trying to play it off like it didn't rattle her. "You should really get that handle checked," I said, setting her coffee down. The small cruelties continued. I made sure her internet connection in the basement lagged. The temperature stayed just a little too cold. I placed a small mirror behind her desk, decorative of course, angled just enough so that, when the light hit it, reflected her own image at her, distorted and uneasy. It wasn't revenge out of rage anymore. It was precision. And every night, she'd come upstairs looking a little more drained. She started avoiding eye contact. Her voice softened, cracked sometimes, the arrogance that once filled the room whenever she spoke, gone. Ethan noticed too. "Mom, are you feeling okay?" he asked one night at dinner. "I'm fine," she muttered. "It's just hard to focus lately." "Maybe it's the new workspace," I offered. "You always said basements were depressing." Her fork froze midair. When she finally snapped, it was glorious. It was late. I was in the kitchen, the house dimly lit, when she came storming up the stairs, her eyes wide and her voice trembling. "There's something wrong down there. I keep hearing things, footsteps, breathing. I can't." I set down my cup slowly. "You mean the basement?" "Yes, it's unbearable. It's like it's haunting me." I met her eyes, steady. Calm. "Maybe it's just the house remembering." For the first time, she didn't have a reply. Her punishment wasn't the basement itself. It was living every day surrounded by the same cold silence she once left me in. It happened on a Sunday morning, the kind of morning that pretends to be peaceful before life decides otherwise. Ethan had left early for work, and the house was unusually still. I stood in the kitchen, hands wrapped around my mug, watching sunlight spill across the floor. For once, I didn't hear Margaret's footsteps, above or below. No passive-aggressive humming, no slamming of cabinets, just silence, too much silence. Curiosity, or maybe instinct, led me downstairs. The door creaked as I opened it, and the smell of dust and old paint met me. Margaret's laptop sat open on her desk, a faint glow from the screen flickering against the concrete walls. Her chair was empty. And then I saw it, a stack of papers scattered across the floor, her neat handwriting covering every inch, notes, schedules, and a letter addressed to Ethan. My name was mentioned more times than I expected. At first, I thought it was another rant, her usual complaints dressed in false concern. But the words cut differently this time. I tried to control her. I thought if I made her small, she'd need us. But she didn't break. She adapted. Every sound down here feels like her voice coming back for me. "I keep dreaming of that night I told her she didn't belong in this house. Now I'm the one trapped in it." For a moment, I just stood there, reading, rereading. I feel that strange mix of pity and triumph twist together in my chest. She hadn't gone mad. She'd realized every humiliation, every cruel word, every locked door. She saw it now, not as power, but as punishment she couldn't escape. The basement had become a mirror, and all it showed her was the version of herself she'd tried to bury. I heard the door creak open behind me. Margaret stood there, pale and trembling, her eyes darting between me and the papers. "You weren't supposed to read that," she whispered. "I wasn't supposed to live down here either," I said quietly. "But I did." Her lips quivered. "I made mistakes." "No," I said, meeting her gaze. "You made choices." She swallowed hard, the weight of years pressing down on her shoulders. "So this was your revenge?" I smiled faintly. "No, this is your reflection." She didn't respond, just turned and climbed the stairs slowly, not like a woman defeated, but like one who'd finally seen herself clearly for the first time. That night, she didn't sleep in her room. She didn't even leave the lights off. I heard her pacing, her voice murmuring apologies to no one, maybe to me, maybe to herself. By morning, her office was empty. The door stood open, the chair turned toward the wall. She never stepped into the basement again. After that morning, the air in the house shifted, not immediately but like slow-moving smoke, creeping into corners, changing everything it touched. Margaret avoided me. She moved quietly now, spoke, softer, almost as if afraid her words might echo back and expose her. She started eating breakfast alone, staring out the window like she was trying to find something that wasn't there. Ethan noticed. "Of course. Mom's acting weird," he said one evening as we cleaned the dishes together. "She won't go downstairs. Keeps saying she feels watched." I dried my hands and shrugged. "Maybe guilt has a way of following people." He frowned, studying me. "What do you mean?" I looked at him. My sweet, oblivious husband who'd never truly seen the war waged between his mother and me. "I think she finally understands what she did." He hesitated, then asked, "You're not happy about it, are you?" I didn't answer, because happiness wasn't what I felt. Not even relief, just stillness. The kind of quiet you get after a storm, when everything looks calm but you know something has changed forever. That night, Margaret knocked on my door. First time she'd ever done that. She stood there in her robe, eyes swollen from crying, hands shaking slightly. "I can't sleep," she whispered. "Can we talk?" I nodded and let her in. She sat at the edge of the bed, gripping the blanket like it was a lifeline. "I thought I was helping him," she said. "I thought you'd ruin his life, that you'd take him away from me." I didn't interrupt, but I see now, I was the one taking everything from him. "And from you." She looked up, tears glistening. "That basement, it's so cold, it feels like it hates me." I sighed softly. "It's not the basement, Margaret, it's your conscience." Her lip trembled. "How do you live with it?" "The guilt." I met her eyes. "You don't. You make peace with it. And sometimes, peace doesn't come easy." For the first time, she nodded, really nodded, like she understood. When she left the room, I exhaled, realizing my hands were trembling too. Revenge wasn't supposed to feel like this, heavy and quiet. It wasn't triumph, it was released. The next morning, she started moving her things, packed up her desk, folded her sweaters, told Ethan she wanted to spend some time with her sister out of town. He didn't argue. Maybe he sensed it too, that her presence had become a ghost. Neither of us wanted haunting this house anymore. When her car pulled out of the driveway, I didn't wave. I just stood there at the window, the morning sun glinting off the glass, watching her drive away. And for the first time in a long while, the basement didn't feel like a place of pain. It felt balanced. Months passed before I heard from her again. The house grew still in her absence, like it had been holding its breath all this time. The walls felt lighter, the air warmer. For the first time in years, laughter filled the rooms, mine. It was strange how peace sounded like silence after so much noise. Ethan mentioned her sometimes, mostly in passing. Mom called. She's staying with Aunt Linda a bit longer. I'd just nod, pretending I didn't care, though deep down I wondered what kind of ghosts she was facing there. One evening, a letter came, handwritten, neat, precise, her handwriting. I stared at it for a long time before opening it. Inside were only a few lines. "You were right, about everything. I see now the life I tried to control, I ended up destroying. I don't expect forgiveness, but thank you for showing me who I was." There was no return address, no signature, just that. And I knew in some quiet, unexplainable way that she was done fighting me. After that, I cleaned out the basement, box by box. I erased her presence from that space. Her perfume still lingered faintly, a mix of powder and lilac, but it faded with every passing day. I repainted the walls, opened the window that had once been sealed shut, and turned the room into something new. A small studio, a place where I could create, not just exist. The basement that had been my exile became my freedom. Sometimes Ethan would come down while I worked. "You really made it beautiful down here," he'd say, running his hand over the polished desk. I just made it mine, I'd reply. There were nights I'd sit down there alone, lights dimmed, listening to the hum of the house. It no longer sounded like a cage. It sounded alive. Margaret never returned, not once, but her absence wasn't a victory. It was closure. I didn't want revenge anymore. I just wanted peace, and somehow, she gave me that by leaving. One spring morning, I found a small package by the door. Inside was a photo, an old one, from our wedding day. Margaret stood behind us, smiling, hand resting gently on Ethan's shoulder. On the back, written faintly in her handwriting, were the words, "I'm sorry. I hope you're both happy now." I sat there for a long while, the morning light pooling across the floor. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't anything, just still. Forgiveness, I realized, doesn't always come with words. Sometimes, it comes with silence. And as I placed that photo on my new desk, I smiled, not because I'd won, but because I'd survived.